The being should not take the path of others. The being should not take the answers of others. It is not those answers that it seeks. It should seek only its own answers. That is what it is after. The being should not flee from any institution that claims to be the holder or knower of the truth. It should not flee from any institution that claims to be inspired by divinity. It should distance itself from them, becoming invisible to them, and letting the wind of ignorance render them insignificant. Through steps and dreams, life borrows from sages and poets, and falsifies them to deliver crumbs and romantic trinkets to the deluded beings, and bitterness and doubts to the mad ones. These sages and poets are the well-drawn and well-fixed skins on the accomplices of illusion. The gaze of the romantics deceives and poisons. The gaze of the mad reveals and heals. Here lies the concept of light and darkness. Faith and science keep the being in darkness. Faith through ignorance, and science through unconscious corroboration and collaboration. Only the being in itself possesses the light. Wisdom points to three possible paths: the path of the cattle, the path of the wise, and the path of the fool. The path of the cattle is the path of submission to conformity. The path of the fool is submission to pleasure. The path of the wise is the path of the mad, the path of nonconformity. The plunge into the depths leads to the encounter with essence. The essence expresses itself through nature, and reacts according to its nature. Alchemy is the art of renewing nature, starting from the essence, with knowledge and wisdom. Attention to reactions in the work of self-knowledge shows the proportion of the being's instrumentalization in its various aspects. Attraction and repulsion of elements and to the elements of the environment give the right measure of the distribution of the being's characteristics on the scale of polarities. Honest analysis gives the character of the being in manifestation. Mastery of the exercise of its instruments is the step towards mastery of oneself. The concepts of good and evil apply to the exercise of this mastery. The attentive being perceives the internal vibrations by the way it reacts to the attractive or repulsive provocations of the environment. To these reactions, the being interposes the most diverse feelings, interpreting them in concepts and classifications. Its natural instrumentalization, increased or decreased, will determine the initial impulse of the reactions to provocations, which test, deprive, and limit the being to the social role, allowing its identification. The being can classify itself in accordance with this, qualifying itself with greater or lesser emphasis. This qualification can determine future behavior, as it affects the scale of polarities. The alteration in one of the scales alters all, as all adjust to rebalance the being in its role. The mastery of the being, by the being, results from the visit to the interior of the earth. Generally, many social organizations were constituted with the intention of forming the character of the being, based on its behavior, and in accordance with principles and values determined by the norms defined by those organizations. Not following the rules, set or imposed by the organizations, constitutes sins, subject to the most diverse punishments. Questioning the rules, principles, and values, in itself, constitutes a great sin, and a great heresy, subject to the being's exile. Only questioning behavior leads nowhere. Work leads. The book is not a judge, but observes the fragility of those who, repentant in exile, beg to return to the bosom of the society that exiled them. In periodic cleanings, things that should have been cast away were not. The book observes how many the light manifested to, without any regret, guiding the being towards the final cleansing.